Hello, ladies. Let's purge. Welcome to another episode of the She's Free to Fly podcast. And today we have one of my dear friends on the podcast, Andrea Omojola, and we are going to discuss National Adoption Awareness Month. Andrea has had the faith of 1,000 mountains ever since I have known her. She has had the smile as beautiful as the ocean is. Like, she's so beautiful. She's so beautiful. Just looking at her, she's so beautiful. I'm just so thankful to have you here, Andrea. I'll let you give a brief introduction of yourself. And I'm just going to give you the floor for a second.
Oh, hey, thank you so much for having me today, Deshonda. I am incredibly excited to be here. I say that all the time wherever I go, excited because of what God is doing in my life, where He has done what He has done in my life and what He's going to do in my life. So,
All right.
God is good all the time. Um, my voice is a little bit hoarse today, but we're gonna
Mhm.
we're gonna go with it and just sound like I'm sexy.
You are
I'm embracing
sexy.
my sexy side. So
Sexy.
yeah, I'm excited to be here and talk all about the things, in particular about adoption and our journey and, just God's faithfulness through it all.
All right. All right. All right. Um, so let's just kick this thing off, man. Let's just
Huh?
let's just kick it off and just
Let's
hit a
do it.
home run. Our first shot. I went from kicking it off, so that's football, to a home run, which is baseball,
You
to
mixing the
our first
metaphors.
shot, which is basketball. Okay, let's just do it. Let's just
Let's
do it.
do it. Let's do it.
Yes. So welcome to She's Free to Fly. Andrea, you have definitely been
Thank you.
just a staple in my life for years upon years upon years.
As
Um,
have you in
and you,
mind, Deshonda.
well, thank you.
Yeah.
And you have been that friend that has truly just accepted me for who I am. If I fall off the map, Andrea is the person on the edge, leaning over with her arms stretched down, like, come on, I got you. Come back up here. And you've just given me that grace. You've been the person I can listen to, the person I can talk to, the person I can just work some things out with on my head. You've been with me on my educational journey, my journey as a
Praise the Lord.
parent. Praise the Lord. Praise
Praise
the Lord. Praise him,
Him.
praise him. Praise him. Y'all, we
Hallelujah.
might get silly on this one because this is one of my girls for real. So we just really might get silly on this one. Um, but you have just been that person, and I'm just thankful to have known you. I met you through church years ago. I can't even
Yeah.
remember how many years ago. But we met through
Let's not
church,
do
and
that because then we have to disclose how old we are and all that kind of good stuff. And while I'm grateful for all the years, we ain't got to talk about
okay, we won't talk about them today. We won't talk about them today.
it.
We'll keep those between me and you. Um, but we have just been on quite a few journeys together,
Yes.
and I am thankful. And for that, in front of the world who will listen to this episode, I say thank you for being a wonderful example of a friend who gives true, 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 true grace.
Thank
And
you.
thank you. And I
Yeah.
remember when we were on the retreat a while ago, you were talking about how graceful your mother is, or it was on a phone call or something. And it
Yeah.
was in that conversation that I realized that that spirit of grace is what passed through her to you.
Mm.
And I'm just thankful to be a recipient of that grace.
Well, I'm grateful that some of that trickled in. She's definitely a lot more grace filled than I am, but
Mm-hmm.
she's been an example in my life of what it means to forgive what seems to be the unforgivable, what it means to walk with people. She walks with me, and
Mm-hmm.
with so much grace and others as well. So I've really learned a lot from her. And I think, when I came to know the Lord, which was not until my mid to late 20s, one of the lessons very early on that became important to me because it mirrored what I was taught is Jesus's saying that a man should find himself friendly, to friend is friendly. So I try my best to be the friend I want to also experience. If that it's
Okay.
so it's somewhat selfish, quite honestly. Um, I need friends. I need people around me that can hold me accountable, iron sharpening iron and all of that. And so as a result of that, I try to be that. I don't always do it right. I don't always do it well. But definitely, the grace that I extend is the grace that I also need. So I think that's where that comes from. Yeah.
I don't, I don't think there's anything selfish about it. I think it's the most self-full thing that we can do.
Mhm.
And so the most self-full thing, the thing that fills you up is to fill someone else up, and then
Well,
vice versa.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know we're definitely going to talk about National Adoption Month. So if there's anybody, to our listeners, if you know someone who is thinking about adoption, this is definitely the episode that you want to listen to, and you
Right
want to
here.
share with someone else. Like
Right here.
literally share it. Like this is the point that you want to start sharing. And
Yeah.
there's a journey to get to that point, and we're going to discuss that journey.
Mhm.
Um and I also want the people to know who you are as a servant of God.
Mm.
Um, so if you would share some of that, just your areas of service and travel, international service and ministry, and
Okay.
so that we can get a full picture of who you are.
Um, well, I don't need y'all to see all of the sides of me because she ain't all good. However, to your point about service to God, I think I just started saying a second ago, I came to know the Lord later. I did
Mm-hmm.
not grow up in the church, although my mother was a Christian. My father was a Muslim and still is.
Mm-hmm.
And so grew up in a loving household, a two-parent home, but was definitely kind of what a religious, if that's a
Mm-hmm.
word that you could use. And so I had the blessing, I think, of being able to find God for myself on my
Mm-hmm.
own terms. And he definitely sought me out because I know that I had a praying grandmother, you know how they
All
say.
right. Mm-hmm.
So I know she was, deaconess in the church and all that kind of good stuff. And but even with that, there was no force involved. And so my relationship with God is one that wasn't forced. It was
Mm-hmm.
definitely one where he met me in a time of need, and I was able to recognize that it was him. And so I haven't turned back ever since. And when I first came into my walk with God, I knew that my call was specific to working with young adults, but I knew that grew over time. And so I've done a lot of ministry and young adult work, but even before I came to God, I was a missionary at heart. My father is not from the United States, and so I call myself the quintessential African American because he's from Guinea in West Africa, and so we spent a lot of time traveling here and there, and it created a sense of self. And my worldview is very much that of a third culture kid, and so I have it only made sense then that when I was in the Lord, that I would use that essence to go to the nations as well as to my neighbors. And so I just have known that God has called me to do mission work both abroad as well as here stateside, and that call to um, Judea, Samaria, and the uttermost parts of the world to try to take seriously in my life. And uh, that's not been easy, and sort of leading into the conversation about family and so forth is that I did that originally as a single woman who yearned to be married. I mean, yearned, like it knew in my soul that that was going to be part of my experience, and trusted God for that. But it in the middle of trusting God, I think people think, oh, just because you complain or because you say, you might say to your girlfriends over and over again, I want to be married or what have you, or you might cry a few tears here and there. That must mean you don't trust God. Nope. It wasn't an issue of not trusting God. It was not, I was not enjoying the wait
Okay.
necessarily. And it was one of the first experiences for me of God testing me in waiting, in that waiting
Mm-hmm.
season. And so I eventually ended up going, long story short, I ended up on a ship called Mercy Ships, and serving as a missionary on board. I thought I was going for just a couple months, and I ended up ultimately being there almost 5 years. And that was where God had me find my husband and where we met. And it was our love boat. And so we met. He is not, like I said, we were among a bunch of nations, and so he's also not from America. He's from Nigeria. And when we met, I said, I'm already, at the time I was already 40 or 39, turning 40. And see, I done told my age now. But it becomes relevant because, I think I say to people now, I have younger women now who ask me, how'd you wait, or knowing you wanted kids and all these other things along the way, what did you think about doing? And and I had to trust God through that, knowing that my timing would have been different. Had it been me, I would have, emulated what my mother did at 25 years old, been married and started my family, but that wasn't to be my story. And
Okay.
so I knew that God was saying, you need to live out loud regardless of who's with you. Who's on the journey with you is not going to stop what your call is. And so I was trying to be faithful in that and just walk that out fully. And I knew, and to be kind of that person that could be found. I wanted to be found. I wanted Boaz to find a good thing, right? So I
Right.
needed to be working in the fields. And so I was
Okay.
out working. I just started to refocus myself. In any case, I'm not to be too religious about it, but that ultimately was how I thought about it. Like, I need to be just living my life, and because if it doesn't happen, I don't want to look back with any regrets. If for some reason I'm misunderstanding that I'm supposed to be married or have a family,
Think we're
I want to stay. I
frozen.
still lived a full life that was full of love and goodness. I have godchildren and nephew and other people that I knew I could pour love into, and I had to resolve that. I had to come to a place of healing and a decision that I was going to be okay regardless of what happened. So I went to the ship. Happened to meet my husband in about a year in to being at the ship on the ship, and then we got married another year after that, and it was a fantabulous time. He is the one for me. And he's the one who can deal with me in all of my nests, all of me, all of the Andrea nests, um,
Mhm.
all sides of that. And I think he needs me too. So we're a good match, and that makes a difference. But when we met, we had those hard conversations right up front because by this point in my life, I had friends who had been married, divorced, in marriages currently that had struggled with fertility, and some came out on the other side of that with children, and some who didn't. So I knew it wasn't a guarantee that you could just pop children out, even though it seems like the world kind of just makes it sound like that, right? The
You're right.
American dream is just, oh, you're just going to have these 2.5 kids and they're just going to arrive.
Hmm.
But it's not that easy for everybody. And so I went into my marriage with some real clear, like, we we are we are open to how God forms our family. We know that that will be potentially in a multi. We wanted it to be in a multitude of ways. Both of
Okay.
us had grown up with the experience of seeing adoption in our families, informal adoption mostly, but adoption
Okay.
nonetheless, and had grown up with that desire for that in our families and in our life. And so we had those conversations up front. I said to him right away, like, if having children is a deal breaker, then I'm not your girl. Because it could just be me and you to the end. And
Right.
I need to know that that is going to be sufficient.
Just
Uh,
honest conversation, like up
Absolutely.
front. Like, that's
Yeah.
strength. That's
Yeah.
power. That's truth and self awareness
Mhm.
and just. But first, you had to have the hard conversation with yourself.
Yes. Yes, that was it. And that was what I was saying. I had to come to a place of, like, I had to
Yes.
grieve the potential of not getting what I wanted.
Okay.
I had
Okay.
to kind of reconcile that in
You
my
kind of
mind.
reconcile that. Let me ask you this question before we go further. Do
Mhm.
you think if you had not gotten married and met your husband, do you think you still would have formed a family in a non-tradition, I don't even want to say non-traditional, without in the image that you had in your mind for it?
Um, Probably not in this,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm hearing what you're saying correctly. So, even when I was living in Atlanta and when
Mm-hmm.
we met at church, there were a
Mm-hmm.
couple people who had come to me and said, Andrea, you're in your 30s, stable job, all those things. You should just go on ahead and start fostering. And, you should foster to
Right.
adopt right then. And I should be a single parent. And I couldn't decide to choose to do that. No,
Okay.
like upfront. Like if you have to do that, I'm all
Right.
for it.
Right.
I know that people have to,
Right.
but I don't think that I didn't feel for me that I had
Okay.
enough, if that makes sense, to offer
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
alone. And I knew that and I still do, I have a great family, a network of support. But I know that for me, I had decided that it was enough for me to be a great auntie and
Yes.
a stupendous, you know, God,
Godmother and
like,
all of that. Yeah.
I was committed to that being
Yes.
the non-traditional way that my family was formed if I
Okay.
was to remain single. And also knowing that, we have family all over the place. And like, if a family member had needed me to take a child or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
which is a lot of times in the Black community, how
Yes.
adoption kind of informally happens, right?
Right.
I felt like that would be something that could happen in my life.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so I was just open to those kinds of things, but I don't think I would have sought to um, enter into the system that is adoption in this country by
Okay.
myself,
As a
or to do in vitro. And that's only because, and I applaud those people who can do it. That's
yes.
more because of me being realistic about what I think my capacity
Okay.
was and is, quite
Okay.
honestly.
And
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. Although it was not your desire or your plan, your awareness is it wasn't your capacity to do it.
Right.
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 Okay.
And I know that there
Mm-hmm.
are dynamic women, such as yourself, who have been single moms and who have rocked it out of the
Mm-hmm.
park. And I think I
Mm-hmm.
could do it per se, but I don't think I wanted to choose that for the child that was involved right up front, like out of the box.
Okay.
Now I say that now, but who knows what I would have chosen, you know,
Right.
at this age, for instance. I'm about to be 50. So if it had gone until 50 and all of a sudden I looked up and
Mm-hmm.
there was no man to be around,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if maybe at this point I would have made a different decision. But I
Okay.
knew before then I had consciously been asked that question very
Okay.
directly and made a decision not to uh,
Okay.
enter into a parenting situation by myself, just,
Okay.
off the bat.
Okay. Now I love that husband you have to death, but y'all, let me tell you how Andrea called this man's name out before she even met him. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes. Yes, I did.
She said, I'm
God,
gonna get on Mercy ships and I'm gonna meet. And
yes,
so it was. God said,
yes,
okay, that's his name. Okay.
yes. God has often blessed me with those kinds of signs, or just sweet, I call them my sweet gifts from my father. They're sweet gifts from my father that just confirm that I'm going in the right direction.
Yes.
And yeah, I had made that statement kind of in passing and being
Mm-hmm.
silly because I was going to Mercy Ships and everybody kept saying, "You're going to meet your husband." And I was so mad at people. I was so angry because I was like, why is it as
Really?
a single woman, that's your focus? You should be like focusing on the fact that I'm going to go work and I'm going to go do these great things. And instead, you're talking about I'm going to meet my husband. I'm not going to meet my husband. I'm going for the purpose of serving God. So can we focus there? How about that?
Mm-hmm.
How about that?
Well, now you can do both things. You served
Right.
God and you met your husband,
And
whose name
bonus.
you called before you even went.
Right. Yes, I did. I said, well, I'm going to go meet this man. And I called the name. And then later on, it come to find out that that was one of his
Yes.
names that he had been given at birth. It's not his
Yes.
legal name, but it's one of his names that he had been given by a family member. And I was just like, oh,
Yep.
uh-oh.
Yep.
The
Yep. That's
giggle.
your. That's
So
your
people
man. That's your
move
man,
and go.
girl. Move
Yes,
and go.
exactly. Yes.
All right. Okay. So back to the marriage and building the family, and now
So we
are
asked the
we at the
questions.
adoption? Yes, you
Yeah.
asked the questions.
We asked the questions up front. And then we start, because we were on the ship,
Mhm.
obviously we went into it thinking we were going to have both biological children as well as adopt. So
Okay.
adoption has never been it wasn't a plan B. It was a part
Okay.
of the plan A. It's just that
Okay.
one part of plan A did not work out and the other part
Okay.
of plan A did. So
Okay.
so I think that people often think of like adoption is your fallback plan or something. And for us, it was not. It was
Mhm.
absolutely part of the conversation, which was odd because as a Nigerian man, that's an odd thing for him to come in. Like he up front was like, no, I want to adopt. Like before I said it, he said it.
Oh
And so
wow.
I wasn't even the instigator. And so and I said, well, really? He was like, yeah, my parents, this and that. So there was a heart for that up front.
That's
And
good.
but we, like I said, we thought we would have multiple children, and we thought that that would be kind of a blending of family that we would be
Mm-hmm.
approaching. And so that's what we started on because we were on a ship, and so doing and we were serving as missionaries. Working on we were doing what we were doing on support, and so we weren't going to be paying for an adoption on support.
Mm-hmm.
Although people do it all the time, but that just wasn't really what we wanted to do. So we started thinking, well, we're just going to have some children the natural old fashioned way. And it didn't work out that way. It just didn't work out that way. And so we had children that did not come to see this earth. They did not live. And so we had multiple pregnancies that ended. And it was a horrible process, to say the least. And I'm being kind of quick about it, but I have to tell
Mm-hmm.
you, this one of the times I felt the most close to God was while I was having my first miscarriage in the bed. And I was thinking there was nobody there because my husband was not in town at the time. And we hadn't told people really. There was only a few people who knew. And so I was by myself. And um and I thought, well, I'm not by myself because God is with me. And he was very, very much that. The sense of Emmanuel, God with us, is tangible. It was tangible. And so I'm really grateful for that. You can't always be good, look at the positives that come out of negative situations. You can't always see them. But I can say that despite the bad stuff that we had to endure in this process, God was still faithful, he was present. He was near, and he bonded my husband and I together in ways that I know everybody doesn't have, because a lot of
Right.
times these types of things will break families up,
Right. Right.
you know.
Right.
So,
I want to thank you so much for sharing it, and because there's someone who's listening who has been through similar situations that probably has never opened her mouth about it.
mhm,
There are people who probably have lost their marriages, you know, just surrounding the death of a child.
yeah,
And so I sincerely thank you for being transparent. Um, and I remember one conversation I believe I was having with you years ago. And I share this with anyone who's possibly lost a child. I just believe the spirit never dies. And I believe God meets our needs, whether this side or the other.
mhm,
And I also believe that there are babies here who have lost their mother,
mhm,
and those children receive mothers. I think there are mothers in heaven who have left their children, and I just think that they receive babies. And that's just what I believe. And it may be immature, it may be irrational, it may be non spiritual, it may be whatever you call it, but that is just Deshaun's belief.
yeah,
Um, because I believe he loves us to give us what we need on this side or the other.
yeah.
Um,
Well, you know, Deshonda, I've always said that I'm God's favorite daughter, and I truly believe that.
I'm God's favorite
No,
daughter.
I am. It's me. It's me.
But I'm the queen of the universe, then I'll be the
You
queen.
can be the queen of the universe, but I'm God's favorite.
When you're not in the room,
Mm,
I'll be his favorite. Well,
okay,
Andrea's in the room, so you're
if
his
you think,
favorite.
so.
Okay,
If
go
that's
ahead.
what
Go
you need
ahead.
to think,
Okay, I'm
that's
sorry.
fine. But I think people should argue with me about that. I think everybody should feel like they're his favorite, and
Mm-hmm.
that everyone should feel like they have a special place in God's heart. And so I've said that even before all of this stuff happened, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So then when all this stuff started happening and these losses are coming and all this grief is, I'm in the middle of all this. It's like, how do you say you're God's favorite and you can't even, give birth? You can't even uh see that to fruition. Like, those
Mm-hmm.
those are the thoughts that you have in your head, or that the enemy tries to plant in our head. But I have to tell you, I felt very much um a lot of kinship with a lot of women in the Bible, but that sense of that God is that's not the determinant of God's love for me. The determinant of his love for me is his presence and his faithfulness in my life. Period. Doesn't mean I always get what I want. And so in this situation where I wanted these children to live, that was not going to be this part of our story. Um and so you have to reconcile with that and know that God is in control no matter what, and you're still his favorite. And he still favors you and still loves you, and he's still faithful despite the fact that you had to go through some hard stuff. In the middle of all the hard stuff, he's still there.
I love the hard stuff. Oh my gosh. Andrea, you just hit on something that I think needs to be repeated because it sat in my heart for a minute when you
Mm-mm,
said it. The negative things that happen to us are not God's determinant of his love for us.
not at all.
Neither the positive things.
Not at all. Because there's some great things that happen to some really evil folks. So we can't, you can't
You
equate
can
that,
really,
right? That's not the
yes.
that's not the measure of God's love.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about empowering youth in this year. Um, I think that's one of the lessons that, if I had to look back on like young Andrea and say that lesson is like just knowing that the bad stuff doesn't equate to your worth or who you are. It's just a part of the experience. And it doesn't even dampen what is in store for you. Because,
Right,
baby, when I tell you what's on the other side of this journey is so delightful,
right.
I couldn't have made it up myself, right? So we
Whew,
have to just trust that God is doing what he's doing, and we don't have to know the details. Our need for control doesn't allow for that. I understand. But
right.
you talked earlier about like that faith was one of the gifts that God has blessed me with. And I really
Mhm.
think that's a blessing because I've been able to just kind of take my hands off a lot of situations and really lean into that. Even if I wasn't waiting graciously, I was
Okay.
still very much trusting that God was in control and going to take care of it all.
Yes. Yes. Your
And what
faith
he
is,
said, and what he said was yay and amen. Like what he said was true, no matter
yes.
what.
And you would say that in the midst of the storm, in the bottom of the pit, Andrea is going to say, God told me
He
that
said
this
it.
is what's going to happen and this is going to happen.
That's what he said.
And your faith is just that. Yes. Yes. Okay.
And I think everybody's faith can be that. We just choose sometimes to put our self-control on top of our faith. And
Mm-hmm.
so you can choose to lift it off. Doesn't have to
Right.
sit there. So
Right. Right.
so yeah, he
Okay.
was with us through it all.
All right, let's go the adoption process.
Yes, sure.
So, for someone who is possibly looking to adopt,
Hmm.
what does that look like? What are those options?
Well, there's several things but can I just take one slight step back?
You can have it.
It's a half a step because I told you that my husband was the one who mentioned this to me at
Mm-hmm.
like before we got married, while we were doing our premarital counseling and all that. But
Mm-hmm.
when I tell you, as a woman who is a strong woman who can orchestrate all the things, that this is not something I chose to orchestrate. And that
Mm-hmm.
in fact, I did not bring it back up at all.
Okay.
And then I had to say, God, I trust you to put it on my husband's heart when it's the right time.
Okay.
And so we found ourselves back here stateside off of the ship. And, I'm thinking it's time, but I can't say, I'm like, nope, it has to be his idea. It
Mhm.
absolutely has to be that he's coming to me. I think that there's some wisdom in that, because as women, sometimes as strong women in particular, who are used to orchestrating all the things,
Mhm.
we can make it happen.
Right.
But sometimes we need to sit down, step aside, and let God make it happen for us.
Yes, ma'am.
And so he came to me. He was like, I feel like God is saying it's time for us to start this adoption process. So let's do it. And, we had whatever conversations around that. And then it became, and he, because we were doing this here in this country, this was going to be like my giftings are administrative. And so I was like, okay, you
Mhm.
give me go. I'm about to arrange this thing. And he was like, go, let's do it. So the options that were on the table were foster to adopt,
Okay.
or doing a private adoption of an older child, or whether you're going to do a private adoption of a baby, doing a private adoption with an agency, a consultant agency, and there are two different things, and a lawyer. So these are sort of the roots, and you start, getting into all the weeds of listening to every YouTube channel out there that even talks about this stuff. One of the things that's hard to find is Black
Okay.
people talking about this. So there's
Okay.
a couple of organizations that I specifically um, connected with that were helpful for me. There's an organization called We Adopt To, WAT,
Mhm. Okay.
and it's about Black people adopting. And then there is another one, I can't think of the name of it right now. I'm happy to share the links later. But
Okay.
excuse me, they were hosting a summit during the National Adoption Month this month,
Mhm.
3 years ago. No, 4 years ago. So
Okay.
2019, this month,
Mhm.
they were hosting a summit, and that was, like, basically the thing that kicked off my journey of, like, getting all the things together, and really, or it was part of what kicked off the journey. We started in September. So I researched all these options, and it can be overwhelming, but I had my spreadsheet that had all the things,
Mhm.
and realized that fostering to adopt was not for us. And I don't know if you can hear
I
that in the
hear her.
background. That is the evidence of God's promise is real. And
That's the
they
promise.
amen. Hallelujah.
What is it? The church is growing. The house is growing.
Hallelujah. Yes. But so, we foster to adopt was not something that I could do with a clear heart. And I say
Okay.
that because I believe that the intention for fostering is for reunification with the birth parent.
Okay.
And while it is a cheaper process as far as adoption goes, it is the cheapest route that you can take, most
Okay.
inexpensive route, which is why a lot of people end up taking it.
Mhm.
But in that, I knew that I could not sustain more miscarriages. We had had 4 physical ones, and for me, I felt like if we had a child placed in our care and then they went back to their parents, like, that would have been another
Um,
miscarriage. So it would have been this process of, like, continually, and you have to be, like, committed to that and open to that and working towards that. Like,
mhm.
that has to be your goal. And since I knew my goal was to have somebody be in this house, I knew our goal was to have somebody be with us permanently. That was disingenuous. That would
Okay.
not have been an honest thing. People do it all the time. They go into foster knowing that that's their goal is to adopt. And there is a process called foster to adopt. But I just feel like that for me didn't feel as
Mhm.
honest about my intentions.
Okay.
And then and then we start talking about, okay, well, do you want to have an older child?
Mhm.
And again, just thinking about our capacity, like what was best for us was going to be that we, if at all possible, would be the only parents to parent our child
Okay.
and not have to undo the trauma of negative parenting process or experiences. Like that was really what we felt. like we could handle as a family.
Mhm.
So we wanted a baby, you know,
Okay.
we wanted a baby. That was what we chose to do. There's a lot of people who were saying different, you need to have a 2-year-old, you need to have this. And I really thank God in his wisdom, he didn't sway my heart on that particular topic. I wouldn't have, what we set our range. When you get with an agency, they ask you, what's the range of
Okay.
the child that you want? And so we
Okay.
said our range was up to 2 years old. Um, and so we were open to anything up to 2 years old. Uh, that was really because it still was some key attachment time that we
Mhm.
could still really invest in attachment with our child and not be quite as behind. Now, this is the hard part because the joy of adoption comes with the sorrow of separation.
Joy of
That
adoption comes with the sorrow of separation. Okay.
yes, our big blessing, our great win in this means that somebody's family got broken up.
Yes.
And the
And
weight of that
you are
real.
aware of that
Yes.
and you hold space for that.
Yes.
Thank you.
You have to. You don't, I mean, there are people who don't, but if you don't, then you do your child a disservice in the long run. Because ultimately, then you have an embittered child later who says, that you celebrate my adoption day like it wasn't the worst day of my life. Or,
Wow.
it's like, yeah, actually, if you think about it, that makes sense, right? You got
Yes.
yanked from the woman that gave you nourishment for 8, 9 months, whatever it is, 10 months.
Mhm.
And that's sad. And
Yes.
in the world of social work and counseling, there's this book, a man, I can't remember his name, but it's called The Body Keeps Score.
Okay.
And um, and it just talks about how our body holds trauma.
Yes.
And it comes out in a multitude of different ways. And so we know that even for adoption that happens at birth, the body is still going to keep score. And that later, there still may be evidence of that separation that has happened. That's a trauma. That is a big trauma that has occurred. And so the older you get with a child, the more trauma is added on. And so again, you have to, as a parent, whether you're a single woman or a single man or a couple, or you're a heterosexual couple or a homosexual couple, whatever your blending of your family looks like, you have to be aware that this is not easy on all sides. That your
Okay.
joy comes on the back of a brokenness and a very distinct trauma. And so you have to be ready to deal with whatever that trauma could bring along the way.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a
Okay.
lot. And so
It's a lot.
we
You see,
research. Yeah,
I'm
you have to
having to
breathe.
sit in it because even though, like, I'm not that friend that's just going to ask you 1,000 questions about stuff.
Sure.
If you say this where I'm going, I'm like, okay, then where we go.
Mhm.
And so even for me listening to this and having this conversation with you, it is one that is very deep in my own spirit and my own attachment and just an awareness of everything that's surrounded within your decision to
Yeah.
adopt and receiving your daughter and just becoming the wonderful mother that you are. Like,
It's a gift. It is absolutely a gift, but it's one that I have to remember is not it's it on the heels of somebody's loss.
okay,
And so, yeah, we decided that uh, as we looked at the options, if we did a private adoption where, it was just the lawyer involved, then there were some things financially that felt unstable about that. You know, uh, Rightfully so. Every person, every woman has a right to change her mind all the way up until the very last moment.
right,
If you have invested in this process and if you have paid for doctor's visits and if you have paid rent to help her through this season. Maybe she can't work, maybe she, whatever the case may be. You know, as a prospective adoptive parents, you commit yourself to helping to support this person through their pregnancy, knowing that hoping that the end result will be that you will end up parenting their child. But if they change their mind at the last minute, all of that money, which is thousands and thousands of dollars, is gone. And there's no obligation for it. So it's a gift. It's considered a gift. Legally, it's considered a gift. So we're not
What
running. No, we're not sitting in money like that. So we needed some more assurances than we could probably have had with a private adoption,
So talk
with a
about the
private
financial piece,
individual
please.
adoption.
Can you talk a
Mm,
little bit more about the financial piece so that our listeners and viewers can understand even what that looks like and the
sure.
fundraising and what that
Yeah.
looks like?
Yeah, because it's not for it's a money game. Unfortunately, there's a lot of money. People feel like, oh, you're selling babies. And I had to realize that I had to think about that in my mind. Like, okay, do I feel like I'm buying a kid? No, I'm not buying a kid. I'm paying for the service of the person who's helping me. That is what I'm paying for. So ultimately,
Mm-hmm.
it's not the child that is the free part of this. I'm paying for all of the services of other people. No, no, just navigating through the situation.
Mm-hmm.
We chose to go with an agency where all the cost was included, and there's one fee. Like this was the amount, and that's what you're going to pay. Now, on paper, it looked like one of the higher amounts. The average adoption, if you look it up in America right now, the average adoption cost is $55,000, anywhere between 35 for private adoption,
Okay.
anywhere between 35 and $55,000. Now, that's the average. So you're going to have a lot of situations where it's much cheaper than that. And you're going to have some situations where it's much more expensive than that. If you have a mom who's prospective bio mom, and eventually like they get on bed rest or they have any medical problems that aren't being covered by Medicaid or whoever, that's out of your pocket. That's $100,000 right there. So there's things like that you don't have control over. And so we decided that the other piece of that is that we needed to have some assurances. There's some agencies where you're paying that amount of money or you're paying less. It looks like less on paper because it's like you're only going to pay 25,000, but that's only for 18 months or that's only for 12 months, and then after that you're going to have to pay us another 10 and another 10 and another 10, and so the little costs add up.
Right.
So we found after putting my spreadsheet together, I got that spreadsheet, pros and
Right.
cons for every single place. And the pros for the agency that we ended up going with, which is Gladney Adoption Agency, was that it was a national agency. So that we wanted the option for the net to be cast all across the country, that it was all inclusive, that there was not going to be a whole lot of nickeling and diming later, so that
Right.
when we were raising money, we had a certain amount that we needed to raise, and we could be sure of that.
Right.
And so we had to then try to think about what were creative ways to raise money. One of the things that we did was we have a puzzle, and this is not my idea. I got it online, but we have a puzzle that is a beautiful puzzle that has something that is beautifully written on it, and we put that. We sold puzzle pieces, and basically said to our friends and family, "This is you're a part of the puzzle that is putting our life together."
Right.
And on the back of each puzzle, whenever somebody donated any money or purchased a puzzle piece, is their name. And so then when we got through the process and raised all the money, we put the puzzle together in um, a clear frame,
Mm-hmm.
so that you could take it off the wall and turn it around, and you'll see all the names of all the people who invested in our process. And I felt like that was a really good gift to be able to give her, so that she knows that it wasn't just us. We're not just rich and can just like lay down a bunch of cash, but that it was all of these people who are a part of our village that are hers, and they wanted her as much as
Yes.
we wanted her.
Yes. Yes.
so
This
that
is
it
your
wasn't,
family.
this was
Yes.
our
This is
family.
an
This was your
extension of
family.
your family. Yes.
Absolutely.
This is an
Absolutely.
extension of your family. Yes.
Absolutely. And so, we chose this agency also because they offer post adoption care for the moms. That was really important to me,
Oh, that's good.
to know that she would have access should she choose. Now, everybody's not going to choose to use it, but she would have access to scholarships and some other things that would help her if she wanted to take some steps in her life.
Okay.
And that is open. Like, that is, she didn't have to decide, like, she hasn't, to this point, to my understanding, decided to utilize those services. But 5 years from now, she could go back to them and say, okay, now I'm ready, and they will do it.
Right.
So that the money that we all, our
Right.
community spent, is investing in her, as well as investing in making sure that she was treated fairly, that she
Yes.
was not coerced,
Yes.
that, all of those things. And so
Yes.
that was important, you know,
Yes.
to us to have the reputation be that the birth moms that have been working with them could say they did not feel coerced. They didn't feel like their
Yes.
baby was taken from them unfairly.
Right. So not only you receiving a daughter, did you become free to fly, be a mother? Your daughter is free to fly and grow in a loving home, but also her birth mother also has the
Of
opportunity
freedom.
to become free to fly as
Yes.
well through your decision to go with that particular agency that would care
Yes.
for her.
Yes. Yeah. And there's a
That was
couple
a
of, there's
very
several.
holistic, that's a very, very holistic plan, consideration. Man, that's
Mhm.
big.
So if you think about what is it, if you have several social workers working on your case,
Mm-hmm.
several counselors working on your case, would you pay part of their salary for the year in order for them to be able
Exactly.
to help facilitate this process? The legal
Exactly.
stuff, the lawyer.
Exactly.
We had one legal cost, and that's only because at the end there's a conflict of interest, because initially the child is the custody of the adoption agency when you first get adopted.
Okay.
And then there's a waiting period. In most places,
Okay.
that's about 6 months, but it was shorter than that for us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you have this waiting period where you have the child at home,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but at any point in time, if it's not working out, you could decide, hey, this is not what we thought it was going to be. We'll bring the child back to the agency and they'll place her somewhere else.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And then you haven't, and then vice versa. We haven't even touched the part about doing home studies. And so
That's what
in
I
this
was just
process,
about to ask you about. I remember that. Yeah.
yeah, in this process, you have to do home studies. It's not, I still think, I'm like, most people, if people had to do this to get pregnant, we would probably have much healthier children and families out there because it's really invasive. It's very much like you feel like somebody is judging you, and they are. They are. That's their point. That's the goal, right?
Right.
So they come to your house as part of it. But the home study is not just about your house, but it's about your relationship. It's about your mental health. So you have to attest to the things that have happened, and you do this whole survey that they do across the country. That is like saying, all the things that have happened to you in your life. If you've had abuse in your life, it asks you questions about that. It asks you if you've gone through treatment for those things, if you've dealt with your issues. Do you have, we all got our issues. We all have things happen. Did you deal with it? How did you deal with it? Are you seeing a counselor? Do you take medication? Do you have also all the things that build up to them understanding if you're going to be fit to take on this responsibility, you and your mate. And then they come to the house and they make sure that you have, covers on your sockets, and um, that your cupboards that are reachable with the bleach in it are closed and locked, and that
Right.
your liquor cabinet has a lock on it, and that the bathrooms have locks on it, and all those kinds of things. And so, if you have pets, do your pets have their shots? So all the things that make you have a healthy home, you have to show evidence of that. You have to have references. They check references. So you have to provide them with references of your character and who you are. And um, all of that goes into this process. And so for
Okay.
us, even though we thought it would be shorter, it happened like right before COVID. And so things were definitely longer than we anticipated. Um, excuse me.
But
They were
that's
long,
another good reason from you when you chose the full price one and done, you didn't have any extra stuff because you went that route. Is that correct?
right? Yes.
Okay.
And I didn't like the only like the things that didn't pay for is if we took a trip somewhere. So we did have three disruptions before
Okay.
this one, before we finally have a
Mm-hmm.
baby, and that's hard. And that's like that process I was saying about like with fostering, where it feels like that
Mm-hmm.
mini miscarriage. That was really hard. There was one situation where we were in the hospital with the mom, and we were making decisions for the baby already, and she had, but she had 48 hours, and within the middle of that 48 hours, she changed her mind. So we woke up after 24 hours of having been there, spent time with the child, spent time with her. She was so sure. It was scary how sure she was. And she was like, "No, this is what I'm going to do. I'm very sure." Da 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 da. But she spent the night, and we encouraged her to spend the night with the baby. We were like, "No, you need to say your goodbyes properly." And she couldn't say goodbye. So we woke up to being ghosted, basically. So we had to
And
pack
on
up
one
all our stuff and
side,
drive
it's
away.
sad. On one
Mhm.
side, that's sad, but then on another side, you're thankful that a mother is
Choosing to
connected with
parent
her
their child.
child. Yeah, I just know you. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like you had it's so many emotions. But and it's hard because you know that there are reasons that led her to want to choose adoption to start with.
Mm-hmm.
Those reasons didn't go away. So
Right.
then you start worrying about the safety and the well-being of that child and hoping that those reasons become a non-issue for her.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my
Mm-hmm.
prayer for that child, is that really that he's safe and sound, and that the things that she thought might be an issue became non-issue. And the
Okay.
good thing about the agency we chose was that the agency would still have worked with her even though she changed her mind.
That's
Again,
good.
all that post-adoption care still was available to
Mm-hmm.
her. Now she ghosted them too, but it was available to her.
Right.
So it's a long process filled with all the ups and downs of life, right? And just
Mm-hmm.
waiting and waiting and waiting. But you have to trust that God again will come through on the other side of the wait.
Okay.
And he did. We got the call. And when I tell you, it's a longer story than we can get into right now, but
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, um, our baby is our baby. She
Yes.
is the best thing since sliced bread. I
She
mean,
is.
I
She's
can't
the
even
greatest
tell how.
everything.
I know we love bread,
She's
right?
the greatest. She's so wonderful, like to be around. Like she has this joy and this energy and this
Yeah,
interest in, oh
yeah.
my gosh.
And she looks like my
She
husband.
she does.
She looks like my husband.
God did.
See, so I think that's another thing is like even for him, his desire for biological children is tied into that thing that we all have, which is that you will look at your child and they will look like
Mm-hmm.
you.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, the funny thing is that he can look at his child and she looks like him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If she chooses to never disclose that she is adopted, then nobody will know.
Right.
She fits into our family perfectly.
Right.
She looks like
But
all
you
of.
are gonna share with her,
Oh
correct?
yeah, yeah, yeah. That
Okay.
was that was actually a point of contention, not contention, but that was one of those little debates with my husband
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
he grew up in a place where it's like, no, we wouldn't tell her that. Of course, that's not what we do. That's an old school mentality
Right.
about adoption. Is like number one, having it be a closed adoption
Right.
where you don't know who the parents are, you don't know who anything is, and you don't have any details. I was not here for that. I wanted the healthiest option of a bad situation. And
Right.
I know that over years and years, what's come to be known is that open adoption is better, even if it's not like, there's some families that they like have entwined their families and like
Mm-hmm.
the birth parents are like part of the family. Even if
Mm-hmm.
you don't do that, which is not really what our desire was. Um, but to have the information available,
Right.
to have that person know that they are loved and cared for and that you appreciate them
Right.
and that you recognize that this is a gift
Yes.
is important, and that they're not forgotten and thrown away so that she can fly. Her
Right.
birth mom has the right to fly as much as we do.
Right.
And so I wanted that. So in that, it meant that she would have to know, have an open adoption. It means not who is this random woman or man that you have coming around. That's your first mom, but I'm your second mom. I'm the one that you see every day.
Yeah. And there is nothing. I was on the phone with my biological mother the other day, and I was like, I don't know how people only have one mom. Like, I
Right.
don't know what I would do without two moms.
Right.
Neither one takes away from the other. Not like
Well,
they're necessary. Both of my mothers are necessary to create me. So you and her biological, you're both necessary. There
right.
is no her without the both of you. There is no
Right.
me. I can speak for me. There is no Deshonda without Laura and Audrey.
Right.
Not one. She
Right.
does not exist. She is not free to
100%.
fly without Laura and Audrey.
100%. It happens all the time. We
Yes,
deal with blended families all the time, but somehow when it comes
exactly.
to this, people think, "Oh, that's not possible." Why isn't it possible?
Right.
I have all the legal rights. I make all the decisions day to day.
Yes.
I'm not afraid that she's gonna come like, Fatal Attraction her and just like, I don't know, people have
Right.
this image though. That's part of it is the
Mm-hmm.
fear. People are so
Mm-hmm.
caught up in fear that
Mm-hmm.
somebody's gonna come and take your child.
Mm-hmm.
They're not gonna come take your child. There's a reason why they chose adoption.
Mm-hmm.
And legally, you have all the rights. So if we're gonna go there, then let's go there. You legally have all the rights. They're not gonna take it back. There are no take backs.
Yeah.
And while you hear like the one or two or three examples of that where somebody was unethically
Okay.
adopted, and so there was a birth father who came back into the woodwork and like sued for custody or
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Those are so rare in
Right.
the scheme of things, that it was more important that you have a healthy situation where we
Mm-hmm.
can all love her, even if you love her from afar, because
Right.
I need her to know she's loved.
Right.
I don't want her to ever feel like
Exactly.
she was cast off. I
Exactly.
want her to know that her mother made this decision because it was the best decision for her best growth so that she
Yes.
could fly,
Yes.
that her
Man.
mother wanted her to fly. And that's why she made this decision. I got a message from her the other day because I just sent her, we sent updates as
Mhm.
part of our post adoption agreement. And I'm outside of like, I've done all the updates I'm supposed to do that I'm like
Mhm.
obligated to do, but I want to still do them, you know? So I sent an email, just a quick one, just saying, hey, just as a quick note, just to let you know how she's doing. Everything is good. She still hasn't started walking because she just doesn't need to. Everybody carries her. Just a quick message.
Mhm. Mhm.
And, you don't know if they even read them or look at them because she hadn't responded like initially. But she responded to this one and the last one. She responded and she said, thank you for loving my daughter. You know, so there's this exchange of like, if I'm insecure, then I'm be like, wait, my daughter. You said yes, that is her daughter. It's her daughter. And it's my daughter too.
And it's you.
Yeah.
Man,
I
this
know.
is
We
it.
go on and on and on, right? So it's
Man, you know me. Oh my God. This is so rich. Andrea, thank you so much.
absolutely. I
Thank
wish
you.
more
Thank
of us
you.
knew that it wasn't as scary as people think it is. It's
Yes.
hard. It is not for the faint. Let's be clear. You need
Okay.
to be sure and you need to be committed. Even if you're going the cheaper route of fostering, a lot of times in fostering, you're dealing with somebody who's been removed from their home for
Mm-hmm.
bad reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be a lot of trauma that you're going to have to deal
Mm-hmm.
with. If you
Mm-hmm.
are not committed to counseling, if you're one of those people who doesn't think counseling is a thing, you should never adopt.
Okay.
You should never foster.
So you did do counseling and therapy throughout your adoption process?
100%. But I'm a person who's an advocate for counseling. I do it.
Okay.
And they had classes that you have to take, and they have all these things that you have to do as an adoptive parent to get ready to make sure that you're okay.
Mm-hmm.
So there are things in the process that are structured that way so that you will do the things to take care of yourself. But it's just me being who I am. I have a counselor. I have a therapist. I keep my therapist
Mm-hmm.
because she helps me to fly.
She does. She
And so,
does.
let's be clear. I think everybody should have one.
She does.
But if you're not committed to it, or if you don't think it's a thing, then you're going to be struggling if your kid all of a sudden has attachment issues and you're like, what do you mean attachment issues? There's language out there that can help you through this. And it's not as scary as it seems sometimes, but you have to be open to other people helping you, that your village has to be big, and you have to be like receptive to what your village wants to do.
Okay. Okay. Y'all.
I can
Speechless.
go on
Okay.
and on. I'm
I know.
sorry.
I'm just speechless. I'm speechless. I'm speechless. I implore anyone listening and watching this episode, whether in the beginning we started off, if you know someone who's interested or thinking about adoption, share it. But I think this needs to be shared throughout our community so that we can change the narrative and the
Yeah, absolutely.
perspective and the fear and the
Mhm.
thoughts that we have around adoption and blended families in this way.
Yes.
So please, please share this with someone. Definitely sit down and even talk with your children about it.
Mhm.
Because even children in school, they may find something out and they may have this irresponsible ideology of what adoption is in a child. You know what I mean? Because at one day she's going to be in school,
Yep.
and so this is definitely important to change the narrative in our community. And if you're listening, I'm about to speak for you now. This is your friend talking right here, okay?
Okay.
If you're listening and you need someone to share with a community about adoption, Andrea is more than happy to share with you. She's more
100%.
than happy to share her story. And as you can see, man, she comes with the fire. She comes ready, and she comes with love more than anything.
Sure.
At this point, my last question would be, out of all the things, what do you think the greatest thing has been that has allowed you to be free to fly?
Specific to adoption or just generally?
It can be generally, it can be specific to adoption.
I think that the understanding that there are no limitations is what makes me feel free to fly and have felt that way, because that comes from that knowledge and understanding comes from my mom,
Okay.
my dad, my brother, everybody, the teachers that I had, the counselors that I had,
Mm-hmm.
my aunties and them.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody put limitations in my mind. Nobody said you can't.
Right.
I grew up thinking I could do anything I wanted to do.
Me too.
I still believe that.
It's my child like that.
100%.
I can do anything. If that's what I want to do, I can do it.
Yes, I got accused once of being a jack of all trades and a master of none. And I thought, where's the insult in being a jack of all trades? I can try all the things. Why not?
Why not?
Why not? Now you should master something, 100%. However, I think that statement was made out of somebody's like limited thinking that you have to limit yourself to only do this one thing in your life.
Right.
A lot of us get told this is who you have to be. And I never got told this. I got told
Right.
There's no limit to what you can do or choose to be.
That's wonderful.
So if you have the potential to be that in somebody else's life, you need to speak it. You need to tell people you know. Grown people, you need to tell. People older than you need to tell. Because
Mm-hmm.
even if somebody's 60, 70, they still might need somebody to encourage them and say, hey, listen, you don't have to limit yourself. You can do whatever. Whatever.
You can do whatever.
Mm,
And I'm gonna say this one last thing. You reveal something. You reveal that your father is from Guinea.
hmm
So a couple of years ago, I did my African ancestry, and my father's father's lineage is from Guinea-Bissau. And
Oh, that's
Guinea-Bissau
close.
is the where it's separated. So Guinea was one nation, one people. And then when it was colonized, the French took one part and the Portuguese took another part.
Mm-hmm.
So
We're
see where these
sisters.
beautiful smiles come from?
We're
Yeah.
sisters.
Yes. Yes.
You and me.
Never put that's my girl, y'all. That's my girl. Okay. 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 So we're gonna end right here. For our listeners, share this. As we've said, you can watch it on YouTube, follow on Apple, Spotify. We are here. We are here to help. We're here to serve. If you feel like someone has some information on a particular topic or subject that you think needs to be shared in our community with love, definitely reach out to the She's Free to Fly podcast. You can find me on Instagram or anywhere like that. But I will definitely end as I always do, and especially on this episode, that I pray that you receive my love. I pray that you feel God's grace, and I pray that you share it with others. And goodbye. All right. I love you. Bye.
Love you.